Are you wondering if the AWS Cloud Practitioner certification will actually help you get a job? With the job market changing so quickly, choosing to learn the wrong thing could waste months of your time. After passing the exam and working as a cloud engineer for over 3 years, my opinion on this certification has changed a lot. So in this video, I'll answer whether the Cloud Practitioner is worth your time and money, or whether you should just skip to the more advanced certifications. But to start, let's answer the most important question. Will the Cloud Practitioner get you a job? A few years ago, in January, I signed up to the gym as a New Year's resolution. I was convinced that buying the membership would transform me into some sort of fitness guru. 3 months later, I'd only gone twice. The membership wasn't the problem. My expectations were. The membership gave me access to all of the right tools, the equipment, the training sessions, the fitness classes, but it couldn't do the work for me. It was just the first step in a much longer journey. And it's a similar idea with the AWS Cloud Practitioner. Many of us share the same enthusiasm of getting certified. We're eager to get a cloud job and think that certifications will get us there. And look, the Cloud Practitioner certification has real benefits. It gives you a solid foundation in AWS services and cloud concepts. It helps you get familiar with cloud jargon. It can even help your resume get past initial HR filters. For non-technical roles like project managers or financial operations, it's actually perfect. But I think a lot of people get discouraged because they expect their certification to be something that it's not. The tech job market is more competitive than ever, and employers aren't going to give you a job after seeing that you have this certification. So what is it good for? Well, getting a Cloud Practitioner is like getting that gym membership. It's a great first step that shows commitment and gives you the access to the tools that you need. But it's what you do after getting the certification that really matters. This means stuff like building a portfolio of projects, learning different tools like Terraform, networking with other cloud professionals, and possibly pursuing more advanced certifications. So no, getting the Cloud Practitioner won't directly lead to a job. No certification will. But that doesn't mean it's not worth doing. Instead, it's important to think about whether this certification will actually still be relevant in the next few years. So, you know that feeling when you're trying to decide whether to upgrade your phone? Everyone's talking about the latest model, but you're wondering if it's actually worth it. I mean, it could get outdated soon. That's how I felt when I was looking at my old iPhone last year. I kept putting off the upgrade because I wasn't sure if all of the new features would still matter in a year or two. And it's a similar thing with the Cloud Practitioner. The tech market is constantly changing. New frameworks, tools, and platforms come up all the time. And it's hard to know which ones are here to stay. You know, nobody wants to waste time and money on a certification that could become irrelevant in a few years. But here's what's interesting. Even though some individual tools and frameworks come and go, certain trends in the tech industry are long-lasting. These are the trends that transform how businesses handle their technology needs. And I think cloud is a big part of this. The cloud computing market is projected to grow to $5 trillion by 2034. This means that businesses will need people who have these cloud skills. But even though cloud computing as a whole will stay relevant, does this mean the AWS Cloud Practitioner will still stay relevant? Well, a recent survey found that 91% of AWS certified professionals report a positive return on their investment. This kind of consistent feedback from people who've already taken the AWS certification paths provides some confidence, at least, that the certification is valuable. This Redditor who works at AWS within the professional services organization says that, from my AWS professional services perspective, the AWS Cloud Practitioner is a valuable certification to hold. As more businesses move their operations to the cloud, they're not just looking for experts, they're looking for junior talent to invest their time into as well. And with the market growing at the rate it is, I think the Cloud Practitioner is a good starting point. So yes, in my opinion, the certification will stay relevant for the next few years. But is the certification relevant for all cloud roles? What if you wanted to be a solutions architect or a cloud data engineer? When I first got interested in cooking, I noticed something about professional chefs. Whether they specialized in French cuisine or Japanese, they all started with a basic knife skills course. Even the best chefs spent time learning how to properly hold a knife and dice an onion. These fundamentals weren't just to tick a box. They were the foundations for everything that came after. And I think about this idea when people ask me whether the Cloud Practitioner is worth it for their particular cloud career. Whether that's solutions architect, cloud security specialist, DevOps engineer, the doubt is always the same. Isn't this certification too basic and too broad for what I want to do? I had the same concerns when I started. The certification seemed too broad, too general. I worried it wouldn't be relevant enough to make me a better cloud engineer. But I realized the Cloud Practitioner isn't just a standalone achievement. It's actually designed to prepare you for more advanced role-specific certifications. It's like mastering basic knife skills before specializing in French cuisine. Take a look at these certification paths created by AWS. These are recommended learning paths for different roles, including solutions architect, cloud data engineer, and cloud engineer. As you can see, every single role starts with the Cloud Practitioner. Whether you're architecting solutions or managing cloud security, you need to understand some common basic AWS concepts. For example, the core services, pricing models, and security concepts. AWS could have created separate entry-level certifications for different roles if they thought it was relevant, but they didn't. Instead, they designed the Cloud Practitioner as a kind of universal starting point for everyone to learn AWS foundations. So yes, I do think the certification is relevant for most cloud jobs. But this raises the question, could you just save some time and money and go straight for the associate certifications? We've all been there. You start playing a new game and there's a tutorial section. You know, the one that teaches you the basic controls and mechanics. And if you're like me, you probably thought, oh, I've played plenty of games before, I can figure this out, and hit that skip tutorial button. But an hour later, you're Googling how to do the basic moves because you missed something fundamental that would have made everything a lot easier. When I started learning AWS, I had the same thoughts. Being tech savvy and comfortable with computers, I thought about skipping the Cloud Practitioner. After all, the associate level certifications looked more impressive and they seem to be valued more. So why not just go for those? But I did end up going for the Cloud Practitioner, and I'm glad I did. The Cloud Practitioner isn't just a simpler version of the associate exams. It's specifically designed to build your confidence. Because it's not super in-depth, you can spend more time really understanding some of the core concepts. For example, when you study availability zones, most study materials won't jump into complex network diagrams. They'll use simple analogies like keeping your backup generators in different locations. When they talk about scalability, they might compare it to adding more cashiers at a busy store during peak hours. Basically, they use real-world examples that actually make sense for beginners. And these examples clicked for me better than looking at technical documentation. For people looking to get an entry-level cloud job, this approach is incredibly valuable. You're not just memorizing services and features, you're taking the time to understand some of the core concepts before diving into the details. And you're also building small wins as you study AWS, which keeps you motivated. But some people might argue that if you're going to do the associate certifications anyway, then you might as well save the money, right? And yes, you will save some money by going straight for the associates. But it's worth considering that passing the Cloud Practitioner gives you a 50% discount on your next exam. Yes, okay, even with the discount, it's still slightly more expensive to do both certifications. But I think this cost is worth it to build up your foundational knowledge. But it's not just about this foundational knowledge. The Cloud Practitioner makes your life easier later on. Each AWS certification has its own quirks, but the Cloud Practitioner introduces you to how AWS phrases questions and their exam format. By the time you move on to the associate exams, you're familiar with the process of actually sitting the exams. This might sound a bit obvious, but I think this is kind of undervalued. This Reddit user says that this exam immensely boosted my confidence in taking another AWS exam. I took the exam online via Pearson VUE, and the pre-requirement steps are a bit frightening at first. If I take another exam online, I won't be that jumpy like the first time around. I've noticed some people who skip the Cloud Practitioner struggle more with the associate exams. Not because they're not smart enough or not technical enough, but they were trying to learn complex concepts without really understanding the fundamentals. This Redditor says, the Cloud Practitioner is great as an intro to AWS. It's not super useful for a job, I guess, but it certainly helps you understand the Solutions Architect Associate much faster if you ask me, rather than just jumping straight into it. So this is why I don't think beginners should skip the Cloud Practitioner. But what about if you're not a beginner? Or if you already have some experience in IT or with a different cloud platform? Remember the first time you drove a different car than the one you learned in? The steering wheel was in the same place, the pedals worked the same way, but maybe the buttons were in different spots or the screen looked a bit different. It took a few minutes to get comfortable, but you weren't learning to drive all over again. You were just learning where everything was in the new car. And the world of cloud computing works in a similar way. When you've worked with the technology before, whether it's managing servers, working with databases, or handling network configurations, you're not starting from zero. You already understand the core concepts. You just need to learn where everything is in the AWS world. But here's where many people with IT backgrounds get stuck. They look at AWS's certifications pathway, and there's loads of options. Solutions architect, developer, sysops administrator. The choices can feel overwhelming, especially when you're just trying to make the most efficient use of your time and money. You know you need AWS knowledge for your career growth, but you don't want to spend months studying concepts that you might already understand or concepts that you may never use. You just need to know how AWS organizes their services and what they call everything. The question becomes, how do you quickly get up to speed with AWS without getting buried in technical details that you might not need? This is where things get interesting. Think about it. If you're coming from Azure or Google Cloud, you already know what cloud computing is. You understand concepts like scalability, pay-as-you-go pricing, and virtual machines. You don't need a complete technical deep dive. You just need a clear overview of how AWS does things. And this is where I think the Cloud Practitioner is particularly valuable. It's designed to give you that high-level understanding without forcing you to learn details that you might never use. It's perfect for understanding how AWS organizes their services and how they all fit together. And if you decide you want to learn more about AWS, it's still a great first step to move on to more of the advanced certifications. So if you're coming from another cloud provider or have some IT experience, I still think the Cloud Practitioner is really great. But now that you know that the Cloud Practitioner is worth it, you're probably wondering what the fastest way is to actually get certified. Well, click here to follow my exact step-by-step study method that I've used to pass multiple AWS certifications.